So if you take pride in having like a white savior complex, what is it that you think that you're doing to save black people?
That's my policy. If they disagree with me, they're racist. You can't speak over Candace Owens, even if she's literally a Nazi kind of thing. So I kind of leveled out, thankfully, and I'm less cringe now.
Did you? Are you?
I cringed.
Welcome back to RattlesnakeTV, guys. Today, I've got an absolute cracker for you. We've got a new Jubilee video between black conservatives and white liberals. This is an absolutely stacked panel, and I will introduce them as we go. But this is also a great example of white liberals being absolutely put in their place by black conservatives. And it culminates in one of the most awkward and cringe moments I've ever seen. You're gonna love it. Let's get into it.
White Americans have way more advantages than black Americans.
I think I'm a rarity here.
It would seem so.
Do white Americans have more advantages because they're white, or do just white Americans have advantages because of historic factors? I think that people want to argue at the end of the day over whether it's because you're white or not. I think that the answer is because you're white in the past, and that's how it kind of carries over to today. You know, even in times of the United States history where black people have tried to build wealth, you know, with the Tulsa riots and everything, where, this wealth has been destroyed. And something that's upsetting to me is when conservatives talk about how we can't blame the past for what's happening in the present. That is true to some extent, but then the next breath they'll talk about how important it is to have dual-parent households, how important it is to have a strong family, to have responsibility passed on from parent to child. And we've seen in the past that because of racial issues, that process has been severely disrupted.
The funny thing is that agreeing with all these things is when I did my research when I was younger, which arrived me to my standpoint of being a conservative, because I believed it was racist, Democrat, liberal ideologies and policies dating all the way back to the 1800s, all the way up to the 1960s, and then the purported big switch. But I think it was more so when Democrats decided to be a bit more cloak and dagger about their true opinions of black people and be more secretive and more, oh, we want to help you by, doing these things and seeing them as inferior.
Doing what things?
Affirmative action, welfare, all sorts of things that eventually ruin our culture and place us where we are now.
So
but I want to get back to the history of it, because we're talking about...
Well, I just want to make sure we're clear. Giving them money hurt them, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yes, giving them, because if your father's out of the home, that's when we give you the money. If you're living in this housing,
so then give them the money while the dad's
rent-free,
well, then give them the money while the dad's in the home.
If you're working this amount of hours and getting less than this amount of dollars, you're getting money from the government. Yes, it is incentivizing. You're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I don't even know what that means in this scenario, because yes, okay, you want to talk about throwing babies out with the bathwater? Margaret Sanger wanted to exterminate the black race because she thought they were weeds. So yeah, we can literally talk about throwing the baby out with the bathwater. That's what Margaret Sanger, that's what Democrat policies wanted to do to my people. So that's why I feel so strongly about it, because it is these policies that date back centuries that were built off of the death and poverty of my people.
Let's take a breath.
So, I'm breathing.
Okay.
So a lot of babies aren't, but I am, sadly.
I don't know what that means.
Okay, let's just stop there for 1 second. My man is an absolute gangster. That was one of the best one-liners I've ever heard. And I did some research into him after watching this video. And my man is 18. Real C Crump on Twitter. Go and check him out. Love it all. Love the I'm a Vax Rebel hoodie as well. But then we have our boy Alec over here. Now, Alec is the quintessential white liberal soy boy Twitter troll. And I'm going to do more of a deep dive character analysis soon. I'm going to go full Sigmund Rattlesnake. But for now, let's watch the rest of this exchange.
When I say throw the baby out with the bathwater, you want to completely get rid of welfare, okay? Or at least I don't want to put that on you, you haven't said that, but the conservative apparatus does, clearly. So giving money to a group of people does not hurt them.
I mean, sure, if you're talking about a lottery, you just say, take money. But there are strings attached to that money.
Take all the money.
There are strings attached
to that money.
Give them
millions. Make them all millionaires. I don't care. Giving money to black people does not hurt them.
And that has not happened, though. That has not happened.
What do you mean?
That has not happened.
It
hasn't been a reparations, it hasn't been this or that. It has been a welfare program, Great Societies Act, that was built off of the idea of, hey, we get these families split up, we get these people living here.
So then let them keep the family together and keep all the money.
I mean, I guess so, but I guarantee you there's no way that
Why would you not advocate for that?
So, guys, if you're enjoying this video, don't forget to hit that like button and also subscribe to the channel. But don't subscribe now. I want you guys to subscribe at the end. When you get to that moment when you're like, that was a good video, hit that red button. Back to the clips.
So personally, I feel like there's really only one thing that white people have a true advantage over black people with, and it's that white people are less likely to be forced into a box. It happens with black people onto other black people, but it especially happens with white liberals onto black conservatives, where we are told that we are supposed to think a certain way, be a certain way, and if we're not, then we're called all these names like etc. And the worst of all is bootlicker, because I hate when a white liberal tells me as a black man that I'm a bootlicker, because then I ask, whose boot am I licking? Because you're telling me as a white person that me as a black person that I'm licking your boot because I don't think in this box that you want me to frame my mentality in. That to me is real racism, and that's what we need to stop allowing to happen to us, because black people are so quick now to not branch out and to have new ways of thinking, or to go into careers like agriculture and these other career paths that black people don't typically get into. It's not because of racism stopping them from getting in there. It's because we're told for so long that you have to follow this path and you have to think a certain way.
I think America is a great place for a black person. I think I'm an American. Anything that's available to you is available to me and mine.
So I thought this guy looked familiar, and doing my research, his name is Xavier DeRusso, and he works at PragerU, and he is an ice-cold killer, as you're about to see throughout this debate. And then this lady's name is Renee, but we're going to refer to her throughout this debate as Mum, because she's just got it. She's got that motherly quality that makes you feel warm and fuzzy. She's like a hot pumpkin soup on a cold winter's night. And last person I'll introduce from the conservative side is Aaliyah, who used to be a BLM activist turned conservative, so good for her. Anyways, just to round off before the next clip, Jubilee have done such a good job of picking the panel here, because they've got, like I said, the Twitter troll, and then they've got the guy best friend, the one who takes her for sushi on her lunch break and listens to how much of a jerk the guy she's seeing is. The guy who probably also carries a tote bag, which is scientifically proven that if you wear a tote bag for too long, you will start growing breasts and enjoying Mean Girls.
That is so fetch.
He's the guy who is really soft-spoken and harmless, but at the same time, he has twisted and dark fantasies about what he wants to happen to conservatives, which we will see in this video. And then you've got Destiny, the really well-known liberal streamer, and then the white liberal girl, the one who's been to college and her professors had an absolute field day in indoctrinating her. And now she just says the current thing because she's so impressionable. So with everyone introduced, let's have a look at the next bit about affirmative action.
Affirmative action accomplished its purpose. Why do we still see the disparities that we do in the professional workplace? If you average white wealth and compare it to black wealth totals, white people as a whole have about 50 times greater wealth than black people as a whole per capita. So I just don't understand why you think affirmative action has accomplished its purpose. I don't see that.
Curious, why do you assume that just because there is a disparity means it's because of a racial issue?
What else would it be from?
I mean,
upbringing, economic abilities,
desire
skills.
to go, desire to...
I mean,
so
zip code does play a lot. If you grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma, you're not as likely to do as well in school, which means you're...
Why did they grow up in a neighborhood that experiences a lot of trauma?
I mean, lots of people do.
Yes, but why specifically do more black people?
Government assistance programs.
Government assistance programs, like what?
Try redlining.
I mean, you can go into that if you'd like to, but let's take a look at the Great Societies Act, which was created to kick black fathers out of the home and get black mothers on welfare assistance. These things aren't beneficial for economics. These things aren't beneficial for actually paving a way for success for black children and black families. I mean, reducing a two-family household to a one-family household isn't going to make them the richest man in the world. It isn't even going to get them out of high school, nonetheless, the ability to even get to college.
You mean two-parent?
The child, yes, but a two-parent household in comparison to a one-parent household, that child is not going to be nearly as successful. That child is more disposed to being sent into prison by doing crimes or not doing very well in school. So how are they even supposed to get that, that wealth disparity shrunk if they aren't even able to get out of the community that is causing these problems for them?
Something I think that this conversation illustrates is that affirmative action is literally the very end of the line of a lot of different parts of a person's life. And by that point, trying to rectify all of the inequities that have existed, to try to remedy any of that at the very end with affirmative action, it might just be too broad a brush. And maybe we'd be better served focusing on the earlier issues than trying to throw a kid who maybe can barely read at a 6th grade level into a college to hope that that's the thing that fixes the problem at the end of the line.
I don't think that affirmative action was perfect by any measure, but we still see really, really bad inequality. So if you're going to get rid of affirmative action, what's the replacement?
Meritocracy.
There's no meritocracy in this country. You look at Elon Musk, he's destroying Twitter. There's no meritocracy. That's ridiculous.
Well, first thing I want to bounce back to is it's not a myth that there are minorities that are being put into colleges that they're not ready for. If you look at a lot of these top universities, including Harvard, Yale, etc., you're going to see a lot of minorities on academic probation because they are being placed in universities that they are not ready for. They are not cut out for that just yet. And it even just makes sense if you look at how much they have to achieve in order to get there. Asian students on average have to score 450 points higher than a black student in order to get in the same university. So if you think of the universities that have courses, et cetera, that grade on a curve, you can only have so many people with an A, so many people with a B, etc. So that means that the bottom percentile is going to fail. Who is most likely, just based on logic, going to be the ones failing? It's going to be the people who didn't have the credentials to get there in the first place. And then I have to bounce back to.
I want to get you on that point, because I would posit that the people who are least likely to have good outcomes in an academic setting are those who have to work 2 jobs, are those who have to drive there from home because they can't afford a dorm, are those who have to go into crippling financial debt. These are and have other stresses in their life. They can't afford a doctor, they can't afford a dentist, they can't afford anything.
I had to do that too, though.
Those are the people.
That's not just black people. It's not just.
But it's overwhelmingly.
If we're looking at straight numbers, there are more white people in poverty than black people.
If you look at the raw numbers, but if you actually understand what you're talking about.
No
the
number
issue is
is
poverty
wrong.
in general, though. I don't think it's like who's in poverty. It's like poverty sucks.
Maybe we should make college free. And maybe we want to have affirmative action wouldn't be that necessary.
And it'll get even more ghetto.
Yeah, dude, let's just make college free. That way you could stay there forever and you'd never have to grow up and everyone could just pay for you the whole time. And you could sit around for as long as you wanted with your girlfriends talking about Roe v. Wade and talking about overthrowing the patriarchy in the hope that one day you might get your pee-pee touched.
She gave 1 pee-pee touch. Okay.
But my favorite moment there was when Alec said, what else would it be, when talking about the reason for disparities. Guys, if you weren't convinced that people are being indoctrinated into a skin-deep ideology, one where any disparity that exists has to be because of racism, and they see racism absolutely everywhere and in everything, this video should be the final proof that you need. This guy is so indoctrinated that he actually can't see anything but racism. And this is exactly what individuals like Candace Owens and Thomas Sowell bring to light. In fact, Thomas Sowell's book Discrimination and Disparities absolutely eviscerates this exact argument. And this guy should go and read that, because that way he might be able to untangle some of the woke neural pathways that have developed in his brain. But on a deeper level, he's spouting a cultural Marxist worldview without even knowing it. Everything you see is a battleground between oppressor and oppressed, whether that be racial groups or anything else. The only way to see people is as a part of a group, rather than individuals with immeasurable amounts of characteristics and idiosyncrasies that make them who they are. But absolutely based there by our friends Chandler and Xavier, who actually form a great partnership throughout this video. And also, a great point by Destiny as well, that you can't just address things at the very top, you have to look at the root of the problems. Now on to the next part, where there is a serious zinger delivered.
I think that President Trump supports all lives. I think that he looks at all American citizens as equal. I don't see him doing anything that would make you feel like he does not support Black lives. That's of course going to lead into the conversation of Black Lives Matter, which was a movement and an organization with so much corruption. Donald Trump not supporting that organization doesn't mean that he doesn't support Black lives. It just means that he doesn't support the fraudulent organization that's stealing so much money from so many people to do absolutely nothing with it, nor does he support a destructive movement that is destroying cities, communities, lives, etc. So I don't see why someone would think that President Trump doesn't support Black lives.
I've heard him say he knows all the best black people. He has all the best black friends. I do support black people all the time. So sorry, that was a very bad impression. But I don't think Donald Trump wants bad things to happen to black people. So in that respect, I think he does support Black lives. But the other side of that is he's not really doing anything. He didn't do anything as president, certainly, to uplift black people.
The economy affects black people.
Yeah, I certainly disagree with that point. One of the biggest things I supported personally. Well, yeah, we'll get into that one later. One of the biggest things he did is he secured permanent funding for HBCUs, one of the largest increases we ever saw for HBCUs, personally done by his administration, among many other things. The First Step Act, which, you know, there's a lot of debate about whether it was really the best thing to do, but that was definitely a kiss of love to the black race. Freeing Alice Johnson for menial drug crimes she committed in the past that had her locked up. She did not get to see her family for years.
Yeah, but that's not like, okay, I did say I agree, but I agree in the sense that Donald Trump doesn't literally want bad things to happen to black people, like I think a lot of conservatives do. So I think that he just says the most yeah, I do think that. I think he says the things that will get him elected. So I don't think that he has any personal grudges against certain, most people. He just says the most popular thing. So I think like Ron DeSantis would be, Ron DeSantis would be somebody that I think actually wants black people to be hurt. So by that standard, yeah, Donald Trump supports Black lives by leaps and bounds.
You think Donald Trump says the most popular thing?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Then why do so many people hate him?
He got elected as president.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't win the popular vote. Neither time.
That's a liberal talking point. That's a liberal talking point.
I'm helping you here. I'm trying to see the logic in this. Obviously, he says things to be elected as a politician very similarly to how Joe Biden did, except Joe Biden actually has a history of racism.
If he said things that people didn't like, he wouldn't have been our president.
So you like everything that Donald Trump says? You think everything he says is popular?
I love a lot of the things he says. I think he's hilarious. When he said big water, that was one of my favorite quotes. Big water.
Water, big water, ocean water.
He has the funniest one-liners, so I love a lot of the things he says. As far as policy, he sucks, but...
I'm just shocked you're wearing a Hunter Biden hat. He likes a different kind of one-line.
Oh, I know, conservatives love talking about his
No, Coke. It's different. Coke, not.
He likes a different kind of one line. What an absolute bar. And if you guys didn't notice, our friend Alec wearing the Hunter Biden 2024 hat, I don't know, he thinks he's like gonna trigger someone, but obviously fails. But also he fails in his logic, and these two just ran rings around him there. And it seems obvious to me that this guy isn't somebody who gets his worldview challenged very often. He screams echo chamber to me. What kind of logic is it to say that Trump doesn't say things that people disagree with? I don't need to explain that one to you guys because the A-team did a great job there. But now as a carry on to this, they get into a certain argument about the Central Park 5. Let's get into it.
He's a businessman, but he's also a racist businessman, like well documented so. So like
and Biden's not? Biden's not?
Yes, he is. He created the crime bill. So that's regardless of the point.
Well, address the Central Park 5. That's what you brought up, right? Yes. How do you feel about that?
Well,
he took
actually,
full page out after they were exonerated.
So I haven't
He wanted them to be killed.
Well,
executed just because they were black.
The prosecutor of the 5, he was a black guy, and so in being a black guy, he went and he looked at all the evidence and said these guys are guilty.
Black people can also be racist against other black people.
Or just make mistakes.
So if anybody does anything you disagree with in regards to the Central Park 5, even if they themselves are a black person, then they're just a self-loathing black person, they're just a racist black person.
If they disagree with me, they're racist.
That prosecutor was doing his job.
That's my policy. If they disagree with me, they're racist.
I need you to elaborate on if people disagree with you, they're racist, just in general.
I was just kidding.
He's just, yeah.
You never know.
Just like the hat. Kind of sorry if I triggered you. I'm sorry.
You made a point. You made a point a couple of minutes back where you said he just kind of says these things to rile up his base. Why does he need to do that at the expense of black people then?
He doesn't do that at the. I am a member of his base, and I'm sitting there like, oh man, this is amazing. And I don't know, you can call me self-loathing, you can call me self-hating,
so you're saying calling for the public
stupid.
Execution of 5 black men that were exonerated to
when
rile
has he
up
done
his
that
base?
during the campaign trail? He didn't do that when he was a politician.
Well,
he did
again,
that when he was a scared businessman in New York.
It's everything Steve said about the comments about Muslims, the comments about Mexican immigrants.
Why does never about Mexican immigrants, never about Muslims, about terrorists and about criminals and rapists. These are very important delineations to make, and if you believe that when you understand the media about it's all Mexican immigrants, I think it's more of you being, oh man, these poor Mexicans, they need to be supported. It's more of that savior complex.
I just want to say, in Ronald Reagan's day, he was given the promise. He said, look, if you go ahead and you pass this particular bill, we'll give these people amnesty and we're done. And it didn't happen. We didn't. Illegal immigration continued even after Reagan already said we will give these people amnesty. So that's why we get a burr up our butt, because he had already done it.
Hopefully the devil's giving him amnesty.
True.
That's terrible.
No, that's base. Thank you.
Tasteless.
Wow.
Ninth circle, baby.
There it is. It's always the Mr. Nice Guy, male feminist. I'm just harmless. Start saying some wild, dark, resentful shit about how he wants conservatives to burn in hell. You can just pick it up so easily, and the other soy boy gets an absolute stiffy when he said it. It's so telling. Now back to the point about the Central Park 5, and I don't believe in the death penalty, period. I think that Trump was way off the mark with that particular case. But the point here is that Mr. I'll be your shoulder to cry on said that he only did it because they were black. There is no evidence of that. He did it because he thought that they brutally raped a woman, an innocent woman in a park. And this is the infuriating thing about these liberal guys like Mr. Can I Come to Brunch with the Gals. Just because something happens to someone who is black doesn't mean it's because they're black. That's just you seeing everything on the basis of race, and that's your problem. You have a low resolution view of the world, and clearly you don't see these issues with any nuance or critical thinking. And the next one is hilarious, and you guys will enjoy this.
My political beliefs have changed from the past.
I grew up in a conservative household, actually, in Ohio. And my parents were always pretty political, so I always stayed political. I was very religious as a teenager. Sometime during college and then afterwards, especially during COVID, my sister actually indoctrinated me into a more leftist position. And I overcorrected a little bit. I started becoming pretty cringy as far as like, sit down and let the minorities all talk, right? Don't say anything, don't speak over them, etc. They would, it was like the whole you can't speak over Candace Owens even if she's literally a Nazi kind of thing. So I stand by that. So yeah, I kind of leveled out thankfully, and I'm less cringe now.
Did you? Are you?
I cringed.
Yeah. This is leveled out. Imagine if we would have been here a year ago.
I mean, maybe I am being cringe. Who cares?
I started off actually kind of similar to you. I went to a Jesuit high school. I grew up very conservative. My mom is Cuban, so ride or die Bush supporter, who is now a ride or die Trump supporter. I think the point in my life when I was the most like libertarian was probably the lowest point in my life financially. And I think it's because something that conservatives do really well is they make you feel like you can always like succeed as long as you work hard enough. And that's something that progressives and liberals suck at. That you're a victim of systemic racism, you're black so you're going to be discriminated against, you're a woman so nobody's going to care about your feelings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas Republicans will tell you, listen, if you work hard, you can do whatever you want, like just as long as you're willing to put in the work. And I felt that way up to the moment where I was losing my house, where I had an ex-girlfriend that was pregnant, where I had been fired from my previous job. There was a whole bunch of horrible stuff going on in my life, and I very, very luckily got into online content creation. And from there, as I started to make more money, I started to pay more taxes. When I get older and I look at taxes that come out of my paycheck, I care a little bit, but it was just so funny to me that back when I was making $15,000, $20,000 a year, I'm like, I gotta vote for the lower tax bracket, blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm barely paying any taxes anyways. And now that I'm older, like if the government wants to take, a few, 10, 20, whatever, how many more $1,000 out.
You just said you worked hard.
I did, but I got very, very, very lucky doing so. Very lucky.
Do you think it's just luck?
It's not just luck, but the difference is that born into a wealthier family, you can make so many more mistakes in life. And when you're born poor, you get like one or two before your life is over.
Yeah. So where to start with this? Destiny, to start. Why are you not a conservative? And I've seen him over the years come further and further towards conservatism as he's become more and more successful, which is, by the way, a product of his hard work and dedication. And now he's in this strange position where he's built himself up to really be something and be somebody, but he's got to turn around and say, oh, I just got lucky. And liberals need to be better at telling people that they can become something if they work hard and stop making them seem like victims. Well, then they'd just be conservatives. But if I had to get my crystal ball out, I would actually say that in 5 years' time, Destiny will be more or less a conservative because he's too opinionated and he's too intellectually honest. And I think that he will just keep burning all of the liberal bridges that he has. And I would welcome that because it would be a good story arc. But Alec, what kind of a man with meat and 2 veg gets indoctrinated by his sister? That whole dynamic is just chaos. This whole thing is chaos with him. And you can see it. The man is a walking, talking ball of chaos. But I feel for him actually because I've been there and I know exactly what has happened here. It is not easy being a man these days. And there comes a point in every single young man's life where a crossroads will emerge and he has to make a decision. You have to decide whether you want to go down path A, which is delayed gratification, spending years and years learning how to become a man and how to pursue excellence in a field, going to the gym, getting some experience with women, stepping out of your comfort zone, and ultimately trying to hold your own in an incredibly and increasingly competitive world, or path B. Just do none of those things and instead create this shtick where you're hip and subversive and you like to troll the conservatives and dress weird and you morally posture about how you don't care about that sort of stuff, but what you care about is large-scale social issues. But really deep down, you and everyone else knows that that is bullshit. You see, path A seems a lot more difficult in the short term, but path B in the long term will make life so much harder. And like I said, I used to be that guy until eventually I realized that everything I was doing was only because I was terrified of the world. I never tried to make anything of myself because I was scared of failure. And I was scared of having to look in the mirror and realize that I'm incompetent and ultimately having to potentially face that. But I tell you what scares me even more nowadays? The thought of looking back with regret and knowing that I never tried because I was too much of a coward. And now onto the next part, which is so satisfying.
Liberals have a savior complex.
Well, I gotta say, this is a shock. I never expected all four of you to just come forward and admit it, but you know what? I'm happy with these results.
I just think it's a lot of people, I guess, people, you know, of the left, whatever, can kind of fall into that trap of thinking that, you know, black people as a monolith need to be saved as a whole.
I have no shame about it. I have a savior complex as an older brother, and I will save you whether you like it or not. So that's just me.
Well, it's definitely not, because a lot of us are really just exhausted of being viewed as our skin color. Because when you have this mindset that you need to save black people and we're just sitting here minding our own business and living our lives the way we want to, I don't know why it is that people feel this immense pressure to be so apologetic and just always trying to cater and coddle to black people when we just want to be treated like everybody else. We're equal for a reason. So if you take pride in having like a white savior complex, what is it that you think that you're doing to save black people, and what is it that you think that you're saving black people from?
I am trying to make the world a better place through whatever means I can.
But you're doing it on the backs of us.
I wouldn't say so.
Yeah, I actually do. I feel like you want to be a savior and you're using me to make yourself feel good.
Obviously, there are a bunch of white people that feel they need to be a savior, but I think there's a difference between helping and saving. Like, I don't think I would need to save black people, but I would tremendously love to help and make sure everyone has like equal outcome, or not equal outcome, but at least equal opportunity, which in my opinion, I feel we do not have.
It seems like to me when most people have savior complex, regardless of whom they're trying to save, it's like they're taking real pain and real trauma and using that as a way to push this political agenda, but also to alleviate themselves of whatever guilt that they feel unnecessarily. Like, I don't know why a white person today would feel guilty for things that happened decades ago, let alone something that happened centuries ago.
I've never seen a white person say, I personally feel guilty for slavery. Maybe they're out there, but I've never heard that.
Yeah, in second grade when they taught us about slavery, almost every kid in my classroom would spend their entire time looking at black kids in that classroom. How was I supposed to not think, wow, these people are feeling guilty for something that they have no involvement in and I have no involvement in?
Every kid in my classroom understood the context.
People hate feeling uncomfortable, and obviously you don't want to feel like the bad guy, and so I feel like it comes from a place of like, oh, well, like, let me make sure that I'm different and like I'm showing you.
Stop it, because what happens is when you put yourself as the white savior, what you do is you elevate yourself above the black person because you feel then like you have to save us. So just stop it. Just treat everybody regular and normal, just like I would treat you regular and normal, you treat us regular and normal rather than trying to save us.
Great work there by Mum, serving up some wisdom like she's serving up some homemade cookies and gingerbread men with milk on one of those trays on a Sunday afternoon. But what a great exchange that was. A bunch of razor-sharp black conservatives saying, dude, just treat us normally. We don't need you to come along and belittle us and act like for whatever reason we need saving, and also like you're the person to do it. Maybe work on yourself first before coming in with the old savior complex. And as for him coming in with, oh, I'm gonna save you whether you like it or not, how condescending. And I don't know if he's trying to be funny. I mean, that sort of sarcastic humor doesn't really land in the real world. This isn't Twitter or Call of Duty, where you and all your little troll demon friends can have a virtual circle jerk. And now onto the last part, which is one of the most cringe things I've ever seen.
I just got one thing I wanted to bring up earlier about taxes, because you were saying that you had your job and you were talking about how like you get the tax every time and you're like seeing your tax go up. I worked in nursing homes in 2020 COVID. The last thing that was on my mind when I watched 60 and 70-year-olds on their deathbeds suffocating to death was taxes. I was worried about health care. I didn't give a shit about taxes in that time. So when I go to work every day, that's what I see. That's what I want to fix.
Okay, that was weird. Were you yelling?
I see you once again elevating yourself above the rest of us, and particularly at me, a white man elevating himself above a black person.
He called me a bootlicker.
He
called me a bootlicker.
Oh no, I triggered them all. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm chilling, buddy.
So what I hope comes out of this conversation is that we're all Americans, and because we're all Americans, we know that America has a bunch of problems, and I think every person here wants to solve the problems, and I think everybody is bringing what they have to the table with their ideas on how to get us to unify. This kind of stuff, right? But you got something in there. Hopefully, I mean, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you have something in there that's redeeming about you that would bring all of Americans together. So I hope that we end on the note of American.
UNITY.
I wish this guy could meet himself and realize how he comes across from another person's vantage point. Why did he do that? What did he think he was achieving there? Did he think that was inspiring or somehow made him look virtuous or brave? My man needs to get off the internet and touch some grass. Go and interact with normal people. Liberal troll life only ends up in misery, and the resentment and the anger is really, really coming across. And for him to then call Xavier triggered, who is cool as a cucumber. It's very rich. But Mum once again came in with a beautiful response. I think she is right. And as much as I'm making fun of him, there's obviously redeeming qualities about the guy. He's clearly a very confused young man, but he has time and space to come back from this. And hopefully some of the feedback that he receives from this appearance puts him in the right direction. But last point on this, guys, this is what happens when you don't have a strong male friendship group and when your biggest influence is your woke sister. Nobody is there to do that necessary bullying and make him a little bit more self-aware and ultimately just weed out the weird stuff. But that's a topic for a whole another video. So guys, if you enjoy this, don't forget to like and subscribe. Press right here. I've changed my end screen, so that should be like here or something. And also, if you guys want to watch another video, click right here. Until next time, I'm Jake. This is Rattlesnake TV, keeping you armed and dangerous.